church's camp, or if you're looking to sign your kids up for one in your area, go to camp.chri for our Vacation Bible School 2023 listing. That's camp.chri.ca.
Jamaican Self-Help, an organization of Canadians working in solidarity with Jamaicans to foster the development of healthy Jamaican communities. Visitation will be held on Friday, August 11th from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the Kelly Funeral Home in Barhaven Chapel, 3000 Woodruff Avenue in Avian, Ontario. A celebration of Irving's life will take place on August 12th at 11 a.m. at Bromley Road Baptist Church at 1900 Lauder Drive, Ottawa, followed by a burial will take place at 1 p.m. at Capital Funeral Home and Cemetery at 3700 into Wales Drive here in Ottawa. So another person in the community passed away, and you know one thing I can tell you, that man was always, I show up at the house, so bless up him, bless up his wife. They'd always welcome me in open arms when I showed up visiting Richard when we were growing up. So there's always a connection somewhere, and that's the father of Jackie Stewart, who was one of the people that started Black on Black in the Houston. I started Black on Black here at the radio station many moons ago, with me, with my help as well, getting in there, touting her for what she wanted to accomplish. So roots have just very close. So I want to send the family condolences as well. Also, passing in the community, a man that is revered by many, Ewart Fats Walters, has passed away. This week, if you haven't heard, well, you should have heard. I'm going to read something from the Gleaner that was published by the Gleaners. His death in Ottawa, noted journalist and author and diplomat Ewart Fats Walters has died. His death in Ottawa, Canada, was announced by his daughter-in-law, Sue Walters. No cause of death has been given up until last night when this was written. Walters had a stellar journalism career in Jamaica. He began his career as a journalist with the Public Opinion newspaper and went on to work with the Daily Gleaner before becoming the founding editor of the Daily News in Jamaica. Walters headed the Daily News for several years before migrating to Canada, where he worked under the Spectrum, a black newspaper in Ottawa.
Plancher sous-marin suscite l'intérêt d'industries, comme la minière de Vancouver de Metals Company, plus précisément.
Developing that cognitive capacity in utero, we're developing it after birth. So we continue to grow our brain really quickly after birth. It's very plastic.
Oh, wow. This isn't good. So what are we going to do, Jim?
Well, I figure step one, we find someone else to blame, and then we look at maybe getting out of town, and then...
Hey, Jim, Bob, it's gonna be okay. It's a holiday miracle.
What do you mean, Amanda?
The listeners, they've sent them in. The questions are here.
How much time did the...
And my question is...
How is it that...
And my question is...
Me and my daughters are wondering...
My question is...
Why is that?
Yes, our audience always comes through for us. So, let's get on with the Courts and Quartz question show. Our first question required a lot of math to calculate a minuscule amount of time.
Hi, my name's Mark Parrott. I live in Belmont, California. Given the recent success of the DART mission, how much time did the Chicxulub impact likely take off of Earth's year?
Here to answer that question is Canadian researcher Dr. Derek Richardson, the Dynamics Working Group lead on NASA's DART mission and professor of astronomy at the University of Maryland. Dr. Richardson, welcome back to Quartz and Quartz.
Thanks, Bob. It's great to be back.
Okay, let's unpack this question a little bit. The Chicxulub impact was from the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs 66 million years ago, and DART ran into an asteroid. Just give us a little refresher on the DART mission and how that worked.
Yeah, you bet. On September 26th, earlier this year, the DART spacecraft successfully slammed into the moon Dimorphos of the asteroid Didymos. Normally that little guy has a 12-hour orbital period around a larger body, and we reduced that orbital period by 30 minutes, approximately, by just transferring momentum from the spacecraft in slow orbit of the smaller body.
Wow, and DART literally acted like a dart. It just slammed right into the asteroid.
Yeah, it was picture perfect. I mean, we hit very, very close to dead center. It was a very tense moment as we were waiting for the impact, and then it happened, and so we were very, very happy.
Okay, so that's what a spacecraft did to an asteroid. With that in mind, how much did the Chicxulub impact change the Earth's orbit?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the thing to keep in mind is the scale of the problem. So the DART spacecraft was pretty small, but it was also hitting a relatively small target. And if we just sort of approximate things a little bit to make it easy, we're just going to pretend this was a perfect, ideal head-on impact. Then if you just sort of not worry too much about the difference in speed. So in the case of the DART impact hitting the moon, that was very fast. But for the object like the Chicxulub impactor hitting the Earth, it'll be about the same speed as the Earth goes around the sun, within a factor of 2, something like that. And the Earth is much more massive than Dimorphos, and as a result, any ejecta that was created by the impact would just fall back to Earth and not actually contribute to the final momentum of the target, unlike DART, when we hit our target and created a lot of ejecta, and that resulted in the 30-minute orbital change. So all of those factors being equal, it turns out that the fractional change in the orbital period is given by the ratio of the sizes of the impactor to the target cubed. Okay. So for Chicxulub, it was thought to be about a 5-kilometer radius impactor hitting the Earth, which is 6,400 kilometers in radius. So let's just make the math easy, call that 5,000. So 5 over 5,000 is 1/1000th. Cube that, that's 1/1000th of a year, which would be, yeah, 0.0 few, like a few hundredths of a second. That's how much of the change. So the Earth would barely have blinked when it got hit by that.
Wow.
But, of course, life on Earth, particularly the dinosaurs, were very unhappy.
Right, yeah, okay, so it was a bad day, but as far as the planet itself goes, it's just so massive that it wasn't slowed down very much. So, given that the DART spacecraft did alter the target asteroid by 32 minutes, how big would an asteroid have to be to change the Earth's orbit by that same 32 minutes?
Yeah, also a great question. And what we do there is just flip the equation around and now solve for the size of the impactor needed to make that fractional change in the orbit, 33 minutes divided by roughly 12 hours. So I did the math, and it turns out that that would be a radius of 250 kilometers. So that would be an object about the size of Vesta, which is one of the biggest asteroids out there, and it's actually one that we visited with the Dawn spacecraft. So luckily, something that large, we don't have to worry about ever hitting the Earth, really, not anymore anyway, but that would have been a sizable impact, and again, still a pretty tiny change for the Earth's orbit, but that would have been absolutely catastrophic for life on Earth, no question.
Right, 250 kilometers, that's a bit less than the distance between Toronto and Ottawa.
It's a big asteroid.
I think it's about that. Now, there's another idea that in the early days of the solar system, the Earth was hit by an even larger object, roughly the size of Mars, that created our moon. So how much do you think that would have changed the Earth's orbit?
Yeah, that was a really massive impact, and at that point, the simplified equations I've been using to this point to make the estimates break down a little bit, but roughly speaking, it would be like 1 to 2 months out of the year. So this would have been a very substantial change. In fact, it would have changed the orbit, the eccentricity, the circularity of the orbit as well. And in fact, the Earth's orbit right now has a very little bit of eccentricity, which may harken back to that era of about 4.5 billion years ago when the moon was formed.
Wow. So if we got hit by a really, really large object, not only would it be a bad day on Earth, we'd have to change our calendars.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Dr. Richardson, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Dr. Derek Richardson is the Dynamics Working Group lead on NASA's DART mission and professor of astronomy at the University of Maryland. Our next question was inspired by my recent 30th anniversary celebration. Many listeners notice that I don't quite sound like I used to.
Hi, I'm Patrick from Victoria, British Columbia. When listening to Bob's 30th anniversary show, I noticed that every time there's a throwback to a segment from decades ago, Bob's voice sounds much higher in pitch. Why is that?
Let's hear what Patrick is referring to. Here's a clip from my very first show in 1992.
After 20 years of hard work, it suffered what was then believed to be one of the greatest setbacks to modern astronomy. The long-awaited Hubble Space Telescope had a design flaw in its primary mirror.
Did you hear the difference? Now, some of that might be because of the deterioration of the audio tape in our archives over the years, but there's definitely something different about my voice. To find out what's going on, I'm joined by voice expert Dr. Karen Kost. She's with the Department of Otolaryngology at McGill University Health Center. Dr. Kost, welcome to our question show.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, can you break down for me the mechanisms behind our voices? How do they actually work?
Your larynx, or vocal cords, or vocal folds as we like to call them, is a very complex system. So basically you have these two little vocal folds that measure each about 1.5, 1.8 centimeters in length. And when you breathe, they open up and they allow air in and out. They also protect your airway, and they of course allow you to make sound. And to do that, they come together and they vibrate. So in a male, typically that vibration will be about 100 hertz, 100, 120. In a female, it'll probably be somewhere between 180 and 220 vibrations per second.
I've thought of the vocal cords like two rubber bands that are right beside each other, and you blow between them, they kind of go...
I think that's actually a pretty good comparison, because you know that if you really stretch the rubber bands, the sound that you'll get will be a much higher pitch.
So how does all of that change then as we get older?
So the interesting thing is, if you look at the construction of the vocal folds, the top layer is what we call mucosa. It's just like a covering layer, like the skin, if you will. And then underneath, we've got a ligament, and then under that, you've got a muscle. And we know that in all of the organs, changes occur with time. And there can certainly be some changes in the muscle that allows the vocal folds to open and close. Now, it's not just at the level of the muscle, but some of the most important changes occur there. And so we know that with skeletal muscle, for instance, if you stop moving or exercising, those muscles will become atrophic, or they'll become much thinner. The same type of thing can happen with vocal folds. And we know that with time, because of some of the changes that occur in the cartilages that move the vocal folds, because they are attached to cartilages, there's some stiffening. We know that in the surface layer there are changes as well. So you put all of these together, and what happens is with time in men, the fundamental frequency tends to rise. In women, particularly postmenopausally, it tends to drop.
Oh, so you're saying men's voices tend to rise, but my voice seems to have gone down.
So, in general, this is what happens with age. Now, it's possible, in addition, to have other things that will cause your frequency to change. So, for instance, if you talk a lot, and I think you talk a lot,
that's my job, yes.
I'm just speculating. Then for sure you can get also little, we call them lesions, or little traumatic lesions on the vocal folds as a result of speaking. And they can be something as simple as kind of a thickening or a little callus that forms, just like you might get on your foot or on your fingers. Or it might be some other small thing like a polyp or a cyst. And these are the kinds of things that really we have to have a in order to be able to make sure there was nothing there. But they are the likely things that would cause your fundamental frequency to drop.
Wow. Okay, I guess I better have my throat looked at then. I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. So you can actually work your muscles. You say that the voice involves muscles, so you can actually exercise them and prevent some of these changes that would occur later in life.
Yes, you can. You know, most of our skeletal muscles are pretty simple. And most people will understand that muscle fibers are either fast fibers or slow fibers. What's amazing about the vocal fold muscle is that it's a unique muscle because it contains both slow and fast fibers. So it's an incredibly sophisticated muscle that allows you to really fine tune what you say. And so exercising these muscles, just like exercising your skeletal muscle, will definitely bring about positive changes.
Do some singing right now.
Okay. Well, you know, a lot of people think that for singing to be beneficial, you have to be a Pavarotti or a Celine Dion or somebody like that. Not at all the case. So humming in your shower is a great exercise because there's a lot of humidity. The vocal folds love to be wet. And humming is just a fantastic exercise. So humming, singing to your favorite tune, these are all good things to do.
Well, so singing in the shower actually works. That's good news. Dr. Cost, thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome. A pleasure.
Dr. Karen Cost is with the Department of Otolaryngology at McGill University. Our next question is all about how bird brains perceive the world.
Hi, my name is Melanie Scholz in Kitchener, Ontario. Me and my daughters, Pia and Dana, are wondering why many birds, such as chicken and turkeys, bob their heads back and forth when they walk and run. When we tried walking and running like that, it made us sort of dizzy.
For the answer, we turn to Dr. Scott McDougall-Shackleton, professor in psychology and the director of the Advanced Facility for Avian Research at Western University. Dr. McDougall-Shackleton, welcome to our program.
Thank you for having me.
Now, do all birds do these head-bobbing movements like pigeons and chickens do?
No, they don't. Species like chickens, quail, doves, pigeons, as well as some others like cranes will all do this behavior, but then many other species don't. Ducks and geese tend to not bob their heads, and most songbirds don't do it either.
Okay, well, take me through why some of these birds do bob their heads when they move around.
Yeah, it's a great question, and the fact that the caller who asked the question said it made them dizzy reflects one of the big differences between birds and we people is that we have very different vision and we have a different sense of balance from birds. When birds are bobbing their heads, they're not actually moving it back and forth per se. They move their head forward and then their head stays still while their body catches up.
Okay.
I like to think of it like a figure skater who is spinning. They'll look at one point and then quickly spin their head around and then keep their head or their gaze on one point again and spin it around quickly. Birds are doing something like that in that they move their head forward very quickly and then they hold it more or less stationary to the world around and their body comes forward to catch up.
So why would they be doing that?
Yeah, well, it's a bit of a mystery, but it's linked to bird vision. It's thought that when they're moving their head quickly forward, that the optic flow or the rapid movement of the scenery allows them to better perceive depth in the world. You know, you and I, we can move our eyes around. We have two forward-facing eyes that allow us to have great depth perception with our vision. But birds' eye mobility is limited. They can't turn their eyes very much, and pigeons and chickens have their eyes on the side.